and welcome to Picture a Better Tomorrow, brought to you by Kanawha County Schools TV, Suddenlink Communications, and the United Way of Central West Virginia. We're glad you've joined us. You know, most businesses deal with a lot of different things in their day-to-day environment and their day-to-day work. One of those things is called turnover. Turnover becomes a pretty expensive situation because a person leaves for a lot of different reasons. They need to be replaced. There's a recruiting process. That takes a lot of time, but that's part of being a business. And as we've talked before on this show, United Way of Central West Virginia is in fact a business. We take in money, we give out money, but we have to make money in order to do the things that we do best. So we're suffering from a little bit of turnover. Suffering's not the right word, but we're experiencing a little bit of turnover at the United Way of Central West Virginia because I am stepping down as the president and chief professional officer. But I am thrilled to be able to announce that our executive committee and search committee has found just the right person to move into that position. So let me introduce the president-elect of the United Way of Central West Virginia, Margaret O'Neal. Margaret, welcome to Picture a Better Tomorrow.
Thanks, John.
We're glad to have you, and we're going to spend the entire show talking with you about a lot of activities that you've experienced. So before we start about the whole process of transition and moving into the Charleston area and moving into the President's Office of the United Way, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, it was a tough decision, first of all. I'm leaving a wonderful United Way, so I go from United Way to United Way. I've been at the United Way of Southern West Virginia, so our main office is in the Beckley market, for folks who are familiar with that end. This would have started my 10th year in that role, so I go from a little bit smaller United Way to the capital city, and, you know, as I've said before, huge shoes to fill, as you've done a great job. For people listening, great job here in Charleston and mentoring to those of us across the state in this role. So thank you for what you've done in your service to the community. People often don't realize what a hard job you have, what I've had in Southern West Virginia. We've seen the worst of the worst, certainly with the flooding last year and the opioid epidemic. We've seen tragedy after tragedy. And so, you know, you go home and you rejuvenate and you come back in with a happy face and you start all over again. So thank you for what you've done and your service. And for me, I've been in nonprofit land about 20 years now. I came from a for-profit background in marketing and media. As you know, I worked at a radio station and I was the color part of that. Clearly, I'm not an announcer, but I could add a little humor in the mornings and did that for about 10 years at WJLS Radio in Beckley, and had a loss. My father passed away, and I've told this story many times. My husband, I'm an only child, my husband and I and my mom were standing in the funeral home, and person after person came in and shared with me how my dad had impacted their life. And you know, he gave me lunch when I didn't have food today, and he gave me a job when nobody else would. And those were stories my mom and I had never heard. And it caused me to reflect, and as I got in the car with my husband to go home that evening, I said, you know what they're going to say about me when I die? I made somebody a whole bunch of money. And at that point, you know, we did some soul searching and decided that it was time for me to move into a nonprofit field and be more thoughtful in the work I was doing, and if I'm going to work this hard, perhaps I needed to be doing that to help other people.
So that's a really interesting transition, and I think a lot of people take that approach, that they've had a successful career, they've done things that they were supposed to do, maybe in a societal type environment, and I know I feel that way. I've been very fortunate to have the jobs that I've had in the past and lived in the community that I've lived in. But at some point you reflect and it's time to give back. And you can give back in a lot of different ways. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through the show. So you're going to be starting officially here in the Central West Virginia market on August the 21st.
That's right.
So what's the transition been like down in the Beckley area? You know, you're leaving a position. So what's going on with that transition?
Well, we're so fortunate that the board of directors and our executive committee reached out to a current board member, actually a vice president of finance on our board, Michelle Rodolini, and Michelle comes from a similar background. She's been in marketing. She was in sales at Snowshoe for years, and so she's well versed. And Her time with us on the United Way board has shown her clearly what our vision is and what the direction of that United Way is going in Southern West Virginia, and so we're excited that they've announced her as my successor. Is that right? That's right. I get my predecessors and successors mixed up, but so she will be and is currently the new executive director of United Way of Southern West Virginia. So it has allowed me to spend a few weeks with her in that transition period, as you've been kind enough to share some weeks with me as I get to Charleston. But it's been great. We've been going back and forth a little. If you see a little purple RAV on the turnpike, it's probably me, but steer clear. But it's been great. And just, it's amazing. 45 minutes away is really all we are. I live in Oak Hill currently, and we'll be moving to Charleston. But there's a lot of differences and a lot of similarities between our counties. We serve 7 southern West Virginia counties, some of them really decimated by the demise of the coal industry in those communities, and again, the drug situation that we have. And Central West Virginia serves 5 counties, and there are some similarities. Kanawha and Putnam, much like Raleigh and Mercer counties, and then we have some other counties that we know we're going to be spending some time in service in those areas, and how we can better help those families achieve the success that we all want.
You make some really good comments there, because I think in a lot of cases, especially when we're talking to people from outside of West Virginia, we use terms like, well, we're special. And we have different situations than you all do to deal with every day. And when you look at the state of West Virginia, we're actually a pretty diverse group. There's 55 counties that are somewhat diverse depending on where you are on a particular day. At the same time, we all struggle with the same issues, and one of those is coal.
That's right.
The coal severance tax and the distribution of that affected virtually every county in the state. So there's a lot of things going on. So relate your experience in working with some of those counties to similar counties in the central part of the state, covering, of course, Kanawha, Putnam, Clay, Boone, and Logan. So there's some similarities with McDowell and Wyoming and even Mercer and Raleigh.
That's right, and Summers and up into the Nicholas County area. And so again, we saw through the flood last year some of our most challenged communities in both areas affected by the flood. So that's really, brought us full circle again to attention that needs to be paid to the areas that maybe don't have the economic development potential that a Raleigh County or a Kanawha County have. And how do you do that? We're going to be talking to a lot of people. What do you aspire for your children? And that's really what I think both of us as United Way folks and United Ways across the country are concerned with. We can't do a whole lot to affect change in adults. We have to provide for adults, who need services and who need attention. But our goal and our focus has to be on the little ones and how we can give them some exposure to life outside of what they may have seen growing up in a coal town that isn't a coal town anymore, or growing up in an area where education hasn't been a focus. And so perhaps they will be the first generation in their family to graduate from high school or to have an opportunity of higher education or military or vocational training. But that's something that we really want to, not that you aren't and haven't, but it's not an overnight fix, and there's not a silver bullet. People say, I think to both of us every day, what can you do to fix that? You need to fix that. Well, we all need to fix that. It's not our problem, you and I singularly. It's a state of West Virginia problem. And as I've said often, we're better than what we are seeing right now in our state. We're better people. We care more about our children than we are displaying currently with some areas. And so we need to get back to basics and make sure people remember what we're here for, and that's to take care of our neighbors. I say every day, just be nice. Just be nice, humble and kind, and my mom used to say, you think you can change the world. You think you can change. And I said, I don't know that I can change the world, but we can change one at a time.
Yeah.
And if we save one baby today, we don't know who that baby may save tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you compare what goes on at the national level, what goes on social media, what goes on beyond our control, that at the same time influences almost everything that we do, and sometimes what we think and even what we say. But working together and focusing on the positives of every community is the key to success. The other thing that I'd like for you to talk about just a little bit, because I know you've experienced this in the southern West Virginia market, the transition of businesses based on our economic structure, has created a little bit of a disconnection in some cases with rather substantial companies from disconnecting from the local community into a more regional or even national presence, which is all well and good economically, but doesn't necessarily create the same level of support at the local level that had been part of the historical presence there.
Yeah, we all know that we have to save money, right? So if it's for-profits or nonprofits, we've seen that trend nationally that we're all doing more for less, and we're extra paying attention to how we can cut costs, and we understand that. But to any company, be it a national or a regional organization or a grassroots, locally owned business, your customers are our customers, our people, and so for those corporate folks, I would just remind them that I'm your bank customer, you're their customer. We eat at your restaurants. We pay attention to who, our staff and board members could tell you that my first question is, are they a donor? If I'm going to go buy a pair of shoes, I'm kind of conscious of the fact of whether or not that person or that business contributes to the United Way, and then we'll say in time, talent, or treasure. So it's not always your treasure. We have a gentleman who lived in an assisted living facility in Oak Hill, West Virginia, and he would often see us on shows similar to this or hear my voice on the radio, and we would get a little envelope in the mail, and inside the envelope was an envelope that had a $1 bill in it. And he would write on the outside of the first envelope, I saw you on TV, or I heard you on the radio, and I want you to have my contribution to your work. And, Ann and I, who is our finance person, like you're Mindy Harkins here in the Valley, would open that envelope with tears in our eyes every time, because his dollar was his treasure, worth millions to some people. And so sometimes your treasure can't be a lot of money, but maybe your talent. Maybe, you're the person who's going to show up at Day of Caring and turn a parking lot into a playground. Or maybe you're that person who can do artwork and we need you to fill out envelopes for, an event that the United Way is going to participate in. Whatever your time, talent, or treasure is, that's what your community needs from you. And you'll feel better. You'll sleep better. And you'll, be more grateful for what you have if you know you're paying a little bit of attention to those who aren't.
We talked a little bit at the top of the show about turnover, and the turnover process, the recruiting process, is a rather tedious one, and I know you went through it and quite obviously bubbled to the top.
Yeah, I think they had the perfect process, but that's because they ended up with me. So,
to be quite frank, there was a lot of people that were thrilled with the choice because of what you're displaying right now: your enthusiasm, your excitement, your energy, and your focus on doing what's best for the community. How was that process? You get to a point in your life where you think, I don't want to go through an interview, and I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. How did that go for you?
It was challenging. And so first of all, it was a really hard decision to even apply. I've said to many people, really wasn't looking for a job. Love my work at the United Way, love the people there. My husband and I are native Southern West Virginians. I'm from Fayette County. Greg grew up in Raleigh County. Our son's in Morgantown at the moment. And, so really wasn't looking for a job. But as you and I have talked, I'm full of faith, and I trust that God leads me in the right direction. And I didn't hit send on my resume till the last day it was due. And that was the first part. I hadn't had a resume in better than 10 years, so I had to figure out if I really wanted to redevelop my past. And so it took a few days to take care of that. And on the last day, just really, turned that over to the higher powers to let it be what it would be, and tried to stay focused on the day-to-day work that was my job that I was getting paid to do. But, got a call for an interview and was pretty excited about that. Took weeks. I really had started to complain that I wasn't even going to get an interview. So they were very, your search committee and your executive committee, I would say, were very thorough. I didn't know till after the fact that there were a good number of applicants, which is always great. When you have a large pool to pick from, you hope that you're going to come out of there with the talent that you want for that job. So they had a large pool. The interview process was great. It was about 10 people. So much like this, you sit in front of a bunch of viewers and hope that you say the right thing. But I just try to be really honest, and that's what I would say to you and to the people you serve here in the Valley is that's my job, is to be as honest as can be, to be as transparent as we can possibly be, which you already are, and all United Ways are. I mean, we're an open book for people to see. and we like that. It's on purpose. But the interview then went to a second, then it was a questionnaire. I can't leave that out. There was a 14-question questionnaire that really was do you really want this job or not? Is it worth this? Because I even called my husband. I was like, really? Like, I'm on question number 7 and I have lots more to do. So I think there was a weeding out process, and then a second interview with your staff and the remaining board members. So it took about 95 to 100 days, I think, for their process to be completed, and then another couple of days for me to stew on it and make sure I was making the right decision when I said yes. But there's been just sign after sign that it's absolutely the right thing to do, and so we couldn't be more excited to be moving to Charleston.
You use words like transparent and respect and an open book, and I think the process that the executive/search committee followed really highlights the professionalism of the people that serve on the board of directors of the United Way of Central West Virginia.
No question.
These are folks that are dedicated to a volunteer position, just like they're dedicated to their professional position. And in fact, in some cases, we joke that we should have a time clock in the United Way office for the volunteers that come in and help us do so many great things. But they take their job very seriously. And the result is a connection with a person like you who can come in and energize the organization and push it to even higher levels than we've enjoyed in the past. So that's a really good thing. So you mentioned something recently or just a while ago about being a native West Virginian, and you're talking about relocating from Fayette County to Kanawha County or someplace in the Kanawha Valley. So, whoa, how's that working for you?
Well, I have a farm for sale, so if anybody out there listening wants to move to Oak Hill, beautiful Fayette County, I have about 23 acres I'll sell you. But it's time. You know, my husband and I, he cuts grass 3 days a week. You and I have talked about that. And as we age, I'm full disclosure, I'm 56 years old. I have to remember what year it is. Proud to have lived this long. There's many lost money on the fact that I've made it to 57. But, you know, we're ready for this last chapter. And I think it's just a nice fit for us to be able to continue to serve the community that we're in. You know, we'll be looking for a good church that we'll be able to spend some time with some community work and some mission work. And so we won't just be idlers sitting by in the valley. We'll be workers. And so, you know, people will see us around, and we're excited to be here. But it's a bit of a transition. I had to remind my mother-in-law that there's a road that travels from Beckley to Charleston. It's called the Turnpike. She can get right on it, and, you know, we'll still see family and friends there. But we're anxious to make new ones.
Well, I remember when I first got married, grew up in Huntington, and got married and moved to Barbersville, and my mother said, well, I guess we'll never see you again. And I said, it was like 15 minutes,
Yeah,
Mother.
no, it's a long way.
It's not that bad. So that's really great. So let's talk a little bit about August 21st. You spent a lot of time in the Charleston area already, attending committee meetings, getting to know people. What do you think your first few days in the United Way office is going to be like?
Busy, for sure. A huge learning curve. You know, I'll be the first to admit that I have lots to learn, and we'll be heavily dependent on your great staff and yourself and your board to make sure that we're paying attention to the things that need attention first. And, you know, to those who are viewers, we would say we're about to enter campaign season full blown. And so it's always a dual message. So in order to do the work, in order to feed babies and make sure kids have shoes, and to make sure that we do fight for the health, education, and financial stability of every family in every community, that takes money. So as I say to people all the time, we're going to do what you would do. If somebody pulled up on your parking lot and said, for example, and this has happened, you know, is there a safe place for me to park my car in Charleston? And your question follows, well, why would you need a safe place to park your car? Well, because I sleep in it with my 2 children. And so this young mother was working, paying her car payment and paying her insurance. But at the end of that, there was no money for rent and utilities, et cetera. She had assistance with daycare, but she literally needed a safe place to park her car. Well, nobody in any office of the United Way is going to go home that day until we knew that woman and her children were sleeping safely that night. And they did, and with the agency partners that we all use and have and support, we were able to make that happen. But that's the double edge of what we do. So yes, we serve when we serve every day, those that often fall through the cracks with every other organization. But at the same time, we need to put feet to your money. So as a new kid on the block, I don't know who gives and who doesn't, so I'm going to be asking everybody. There's a joke in Raleigh County that if you see me coming, you cross the street because you kind of know what's going to follow that with, how you doing and have you made your donation lately? But that's followed by, let me tell you why, and let me tell you about, what this opioid addiction is doing to babies and how many babies are born addicted at women's and children's, and that there's a special neonatal intensive hospital in Huntington just to take care of the babies that are born addicted, and that they served nearly 200 babies last year. So there's a reason that we need money, and the money is to do the work that you would do, but instead you're taking care of your family and you're taking care of your church and you're making sure your kids are fed and off to school on time. And so it's our role, in this community to bring everybody together and try to make sure that all the needs are met. And that's a tough job. It's not easy.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about that in the second segment, but we're going to take a little break right now. So stay tuned, folks. This is Picture a Better Tomorrow, brought to you by Kanawha County Schools, Suddenly Communication, and the United Way of Central West Virginia. And we'll be right back. Welcome back to Picture a Better Tomorrow, brought to you by Kanawha County Schools TV, Suddenly Communication, and the United Way of Central West Virginia. So if you're a regular viewer of this show, you know that we reserve the second portion for a success story. And we've got a success story right in the studio. Her name is Margaret O'Neal. She is the incoming president of the United Way of Central West Virginia. We'll start officially here in the Kanawha Valley on August the 21st. Margaret, in the first segment, we talked a little bit about being efficient and saving money and doing all the things that for-profit and nonprofit organizations strive to do, either for their clients / beneficiaries or for their shareholders.
Right.
So there's some fake news that floats around occasionally, and I use that term not in a joking way, but in a precise way. There's some information that gets into the social media stream and gets into the newspapers potentially that is just incorrect.
Right.
And one of those things is that people should worry about where they give their money, which is true. They should do some homework, but then there's some very misleading information about how much money is actually used for program and client support when it's donated through United Way. So talk a little bit about what happens in Beckley in your past and what will happen in Central West Virginia as a result of that. How much of $1 or $100 will actually get into the hands of a program person to help one of those folks that you described in the first segment?
Okay, so let me say a couple of things. First of all, there is a philosophy, and we were just talking about this yesterday with some folks in our office. And so there's a thought process that nonprofit people should be poor. And I understand that the feeling is that we should put every dime that we raise back into the community. And believe me, we do our very, very, very best to do that. But I also say this, if you're going to have good people who are going to work 18, 20 hours, and that's not a joke. I mean, you and I both know we've answered phones and texts and emails at midnight because somebody has a need that needs to be addressed right away. So we're working basically 24/7, and I don't think that you get the best people for the least amount of money. So I'm not one of those people who thinks that you should beat down a nonprofit to the very minimum amount of money because you don't always get the work that you need to make that program successful. So there's that philosophy. The second thing is you have to always be mindful of these nonprofits who are national or international organizations. And so the United Way is worldwide. There are United Ways in many, many countries. There are about 1,800 United Ways globally. There are 14 United Ways in the state, and although all of us operate under the big umbrella with membership requirements and very, very stringent and specific financial requirements that we have to provide to them, we also have the autonomy to do our own work and to concentrate and focus on the work in our communities. So there's that. There's a national picture, which you and I really don't control. We are mindful of it, but can't control it. And then there's the local work that's done right here in your community that you give that money to. So as a donor, I would say I work hard for my money. You work hard for your money. I'm very mindful of who I donate to. I choose to donate to the United Way because I can show myself exactly where that money goes. And so in both of our organizations, about 85 cents of every dollar goes back out into programming work through our agency partners or initiatives directly out of our office, where we feed people, clothe people, basic needs and safety net organizations, domestic violence programs, child abuse programs, and the list goes on and on and on and on. So that's a pretty impactful thing when you look at how much of that money goes back to your community to do the work that you, the donor, want done, right? Because we're telling you exactly what we do with your money, and then we show you exactly where it goes. And we've had nonprofit organizations that we partner with say to us, as they have to you, I would not be in business today if I wasn't receiving support from our local United Way. So the money stays here, works here, lives here, and even though I get paid and you get paid, we shop here. I'm going to get my hair done here. I'm going to get gas here. I'm going to buy groceries here, and so we support. It's a partnership. It's a combination of people who come together to do the best thing for everybody, and that's the United Way. That's how the name got started. It was to bring together, to unite people to serve the communities that we're in and those who may not be able to serve themselves. So that's, I think if you're going to give, look at everything. And I'm the worst. My husband will tell you, if I go to a store and there's people standing outside the store with a little cardboard sign that says give to pick anything, children and families. So I'm going to stop there before I go into the store, and we're going to have a conversation about, are you a 501c3, and where does your money go, and how can I see that? Because even if it's quarters, nickels, and dimes, folks, if you're pouring that into somebody's bucket, you need to know where that bucket's going. And we had people in southern West Virginia last year with buckets, literally buckets and cardboard signs, taking folks' money for coats and shoes for children, and it was crossing the state line. Whether or not it was being given to children for coats and shoes, I couldn't answer that. But even your nickels, quarters, and dimes serve people here when you know that you're given to the United Way. And so it's a personal choice, but you need to be mindful of it.
Well, that's a really good point. So we've just got a couple of minutes left. So one thing I'd like for you to address really quickly, you mentioned in the first segment that people literally cross the street when they see you coming. I would venture a guess that you cross the street as well.
Every time.
And you mentioned that you don't know who gives and who doesn't give. So what would be your challenge to the community as the incoming president of United Way?
Well, I'm a glass half full kind of girl, so I will make the assumption that everybody is a donor until proven otherwise. And so you're off the hook for a little while. The meeting and greeting will just be to get to know you, get to know what your desires and aspirations are for the communities that we serve in these 5 counties. But, you're off the hook until I figure out who is and who isn't. Right now, we're assuming that everybody, and here's the thing I've said for many, many, many decades of fundraising. If everybody would give $1, right? If everybody would give $1 once a month to the United Way, you wouldn't see us out here having to, really inspire big donors, because everybody would be doing a little part to make sure that all the needs are met. But you and I both know that's never going to happen. So we have to share our message and continue to inspire people to give, and to know that when they're given to the United Way, they can be assured and confident that their money is working in the community just exactly the way they want it to work. So you're off the hook right now. I know you're a donor.
You are going to set the bar really high. So Margaret Ann O'Neal, the incoming president of the United Way of Central West Virginia, thank you so much for being on Picture a Better Tomorrow. Best of luck to you, and you are going to energize this community. We're just glad to have you.
Thank you for what you've done. You set a high bar.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is my last show, and I'd like to challenge each one of you to get behind this lady called Margaret O'Neal and help her be successful, because when we work together, then we will have a better community. We will be better people. We will have better jobs. We will have better friends. Everything will improve. When we work together, it's a really, really great thing. Thanks for joining us on Picture a Better Tomorrow, and we'll see you next time.